Hello, you sweetest potatoes. I just got back from Seoul for one of my best friend's wedding, and it was like a mini reunion with all of our high school BFFs who are basically like family to me, and it was filled with so much love, giggles, and good-natured bickering. This trip was exactly what I didn't know I needed. For the first time since I started making videos on YouTube, which is a little over 3 years, I told myself I wasn't going to touch or think about work at all for one full week. And as someone who has historically expected a lot out of life because I expect a lot from myself, this is something I'm actively working on. I went into this trip with zero expectations. So setting boundaries and letting go of expectations, this was my way of unroutining. We all know by now how important it is for us to have a routine, but something I feel that we don't talk about nearly as much is how important and conducive downtime is for our long-term productivity and success. Doing something new, doing something different, doing something we don't usually do, and even doing nothing for a few minutes a day can be massively helpful for our mental health in the long run. Quoting one of my favorite books, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, the beauty of doing nothing is that it teaches you to clear your mind and relax. It allows your mind the freedom to not know for a brief period of time. Just like your body, your mind needs an occasional break from its hectic routine. When you allow your mind to take a break, it comes back stronger, sharper, more focused, and creative. And this is exactly how I feel, which is why I made this video to share with you guys. So how exactly does one unroutine? Start by setting boundaries. True strength is found in standing firm, yet bending gently. Boundaries can be something physical and tangible, or emotional and intangible. It's a limit defining you in a relationship to someone or to something. Limits are something deeply personal, so it's likely that what my boundaries are will be very different from what yours are, which will be very different from the next person over. Because what I do for a living, creating content and running 2 channels, has grown to become an extension of me and who I am, it has been very hard trying to create healthy boundaries and turn my mind off because I'm constantly thinking about everything that is work. But just because something is hard doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So if you guys have been following along my journey, you guys know how long I've been working on my work-life balance, or should I say work-work balance? Okay. So the idea to not work for a full week, I think I've worked myself up to the point where I just accepted it. I was like, you need to do this for yourself, and you need to do this for your mental health. And I'm happy to report that while I did check my emails here and there, I only brought out my laptop for less than a handful of times to actually type out emails or to do things that I need to do. And as someone who takes life and work very seriously all the time, it's nice to take a little breather and to just be. While it's important and necessary to live and work with purpose and meaning, we shouldn't be attached to attaching purpose and meaning to everything that we do, so much so that we forget to be present, which brings us to setting expectations. Keep your standards high and your expectations low. Before the trip, I loosely jotted down things I wanted to do, which is just to shop and eat, namely Kalbi Gym. So good. And I looked up neighborhoods I wanted to check out, but all in all, I wanted to be more present with friends I haven't spent quality time with in a few years rather than marry myself to a jam-packed itinerary filled with cute IG-worthy cafes. My main takeaway from this trip was that the best and most beautiful things come into our lives when we're free of expectations. Having expectations means we're projecting or holding on to an idealized reality or future, which simply translates to not being present, which is something I've been guilty of for the majority of the past few months. And because I went into this trip with zero expectations, I was mind blown by how much fun I had because I was not disappointed in any shape or form because I'm such a judger, like Myers-Briggs, judger versus perceiver. I'm a judger and I like to plan things, and because I judge and because I like to plan, a lot of times things don't go according to plan and I get upset. And if you're like me, it's worth trying to exercise the muscle of letting go of expectations. Because after this trip, I just know moving forward, just literally don't have expectations for anything. Definitely easier said than done, but this is why the first part of the quote I said earlier is so important, is you need to always keep your standards high, but expectations low. Okay, and next, Plan, put in the work, and let it all go. After putting in the work to set boundaries and expectations in place, the best thing we can do at this point is to put our trust in the universe that it has the best path laid out for us in life, in work, and in play. From personal experience, I found that what's meant to happen will always happen, and what's not meant to happen, even if you somehow force it into your life, will bring more turbulence and anguish rather than stillness and peace, which I think at this point in our lives, we should be striving for stillness and peace. Which takes us to the next point of let yourself be bored. This is a long excerpt from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. If you allow yourself to be bored, even for an hour or less, and don't fight it, the feelings of boredom will be replaced with feelings of peace. And after a little practice, you'll learn to relax. I'm not talking about hours of idle time or laziness, but simply learning the art of relaxing or just being, rather than doing, for a few minutes each day. There isn't a specific technique other than to consciously do nothing. At first, you may get a little anxious, but each day it will get a little easier. The payback is tremendous. Much of our anxiety and inner struggle stems from our busy, overactive minds, always needing something to entertain them, something to focus on, and always wondering, what's next? While we're eating dinner, we wonder, what's for dessert? While eating dessert, we ponder what we should do afterward. After the evening, it's what should we do this weekend? After we've been out, we walk into the house and immediately turn on the television, pick up the phone, open a book, or start cleaning. It's almost as though we're frightened at the thought of not having something to do, even for a minute. When you allow yourself to be bored, it takes an enormous amount of pressure off you to be performing and doing something every second of the day. All of that to say, this is precisely why this trip was exactly what I didn't know I needed. Even though I went into it slightly out of desperation that I've just been working too much and I need to take a little break for the first time in my life, a little bit dramatic, the fact that I put my foot down and said, I'm not going to work and I'm not going to have any expectations was actually a pretty big feat. And I'm happy to report that I feel like a brand new person. And with that, the last point is to just enjoy yourself, as I did thoroughly for the week that I was in Seoul. And this is something that I'm so incredibly and immensely grateful for, being able to have the time to do something like this, being in a position in my life where I can choose to not work for a week and still get by, and things won't go up in flames and I'll be all right. And for being able to spend time with people who I grew up with, who I consider family, and just seeing how, although we've all changed and although so much has changed since 10, 15 years ago when we met, the fact that we all resort to our younger, carefree, less stressed selves when we're together says so much. And it's just, relationships and friendships are such a beautiful and magical thing. And for someone who's been prioritizing work over almost everything else in my life, I'm relearning that relationships are probably more important than work. Absolutely. And it's something that, because I re-enlightened to this fact, I'm going to start putting in more active effort into being a better friend, being more present, and just overall being more available, because I've been very unavailable. And this was all made possible through unroutining. And I want to say here that unroutining doesn't need to be like a week-long thing like I did here. It can be anything. It can be applied to your day-to-day life. It can be 5-10 minutes out of your day. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. So with all of that, thank you guys so much for joining me on this journey. I'm glad I was able to share a snippet of my trip with you guys through this form of a video. I wanted to provide a little more context and value rather than just, hey guys, here's me having a great time in Seoul. And well, there's nothing wrong with those types of vlogs. I felt inspired to create something like this. And if you guys like this style, I think some of you guys said you missed the voiceover style. So here's the moist over. Here's the voiceover style. And with that, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I send you guys the biggest voice hug. Yes. Okay. Bye. Bye.